The purpose of this video is to cover a demonstration of the migration from Vormetric Key Management for SQL Server to CipherTrust Application Key Management for the CipherTrust Management Data Security Platform. So in my current environment, I have a Windows Server. It's a SQL Server version 16 and a Windows Server, I believe it's Windows Server version 22. And I'm currently have the Vormetric Key Agent, and it's running version 6.4.3, and I have a database that's already encrypted with a key that's being managed by the Vormetric DSM. The database is called Credit. Just to validate that I have data access, I'll run a quick query. And you can see that I can see the data with no issue. And just to demonstrate that the data is encrypted and with what key it's used to encrypt the data, I'll run another query here. And so the name of the database is Credit, and the database status is it's encrypted, and the key that is used to encrypt that database is a key or asymmetric key that is stored on the Data Security Manager. Let me show you that key real quick. So let me switch to the domain. So in the Vormetric domain called test domain, I can see my keys. And in this case, I have a key name with VKM underscore key 1 that matches the database key that's being used to protect the encryption key for the database, and it is an RSA 2048 key. So we know that the environment is set up for key management under the Vormetric platform and the Data Security Manager, and the goal is to, from start of the installation up through the configuration of CipherTrust Manager and migration of the data encryption key to that environment. Those are the next steps we're going to perform. So to start with, we're going to go out to CipherTrust Manager and prep that environment. I'm going to log in with an administrative account. And we currently have no relevant keys, so you can see there's just an internal key. No other keys are currently created. If I go to users, there's no other users installed but the default one. So this is an extremely clean environment. It's brand new. So for the CipherTrust Key Agent to talk to CipherTrust Manager, it does need an account to work with. This could be a domain users, but I'm going to just create a local user. Call the user CAKM underscore user. And this is going to act as a service account for the key agent to communicate with the CipherTrust Manager. In order to manage keys, this key agent needs, or this user needs to have access to keys. So if I'll go to group membership, I'm going to add a group. This is a group of permissions, and I'm going to give that user access or permissions as a key admin. And now that user can create and rotate keys for the SQL Server instance. That's the only prep that's required on the CipherTrust Manager side. Now I'm going to go back out to the Windows Server, and I'm going to start the installation of the software. In this case, I've downloaded the CAKM agent version 8.6, which is the latest as of this recording. At this point, it's prompting for what protocol to use to secure communication between the CAKM agent and the CipherTrust Manager. We default to SSL or TLS, which uses certificates in order to manage the secure communication between the nodes. During the registration process, if you go and use the default, we will generate the certificates, and those certificates will be signed by the CipherTrust Manager. To start, we need to provide a user credential on CipherTrust Manager that has enough privileges to perform the certificate signing operation. In this case, I'm going to use admin. The CipherTrust Manager hostname or IP address, and admin's password, of course. And then the default port, the port I want to use for communication between the CAKM agent and CipherTrust Manager. I'll use the default port, which is 9000. So this is the information for the certificate signing request. It really doesn't matter what information you'll put here. The CSR, or certificate signing request, will be signed and stored locally on the CAKM configuration area. I simply like to use the server name. When you get this message that the installation was successful, then the certificates were also generated successfully as well. Now that the CAKM agent is installed, we can configure the SQL Server Environment to configure the CAKM provider and create the necessary asymmetric key and migrate that key over to CipherTrust Manager. So here is an overview of the necessary steps. Before we create the CAKM provider, we must restart the SQL Server instance after the installation, or this piece will fail. Okay, once the service is restarted, and this is the only really required downtime during the whole process, is the restarting of the service in order to allow SQL Server to create the new provider. We'll create the cryptographic provider. We'll call the provider CAKM provider. We'll create a credential that will encapsulate the service account that is used to retrieve and manage the asymmetric key, or to use the asymmetric key that is being stored on CipherTrust Manager. We'll create a credential or a login that uses that credential, and I'm associating that login with the SA account. I'm going to use the master database. Now at this point we're ready to create the asymmetric key on CipherTrust Manager. This is the key that we'll use to protect the data encryption key. And that data encryption key does not have to change, or it can be rotated as well. Now we're going to create another credential using the cryptographic provider. create a login from that asymmetric key, and then alter the login to add the credential. And then we're going to use the credit database. And then we're going to alter the database encryption key to no longer use the old key, but use the new key we just created. Now, at this step, the work is done. Essentially, the data encryption key is now being protected by a new asymmetric key that's in CipherTrust Manager. To query that, we'll perform the same SQL statement we did previously. And you can now see that the credit database is using the new asymmetric key that is stored on CipherTrust Manager. Just take a quick look at the keys, and you can see that this is the key that was created during the process. Is now protecting the data encryption key. The last thing that you will definitely need to do is to update the properties file to make sure that the key agent can see all the CipherTrust Manager nodes of the cluster. To do that, we'll go to the installation directory, which is program files CipherTrust, and then of course the CAKM directory structure. There is a property files here called CAKM underscore MSQL EKM properties file. We're going to edit that with Notepad. And one of the key parameters here is the names of the nodes or IP addresses of the CipherTrust Manager cluster nodes. And currently it only has one CipherTrust node. Assuming that you have a cluster of CipherTrust Manager nodes, you would simply separate them by a colon. And once you save this, what will happen is, in the event one CipherTrust Manager does not become available during key use, then the second CipherTrust Manager will be reached and contacted for the same purpose. And that's all there is to setup.